What happens when a nation's greatest hero disappears from its own memory? He didn't just play football, he electrified it. Before Africa had a seat at Europe's table, one Ghanaian boy forced the world to look our way. He was called the African Maradona, the magician of Marseille, the left foot of God. He conquered Europe. He became a 3-time African Footballer of the Year. He made Ghana dream again. But then he vanished. No statue, no documentary, no celebration, just shadows. This is not just about football. This is about how legends are made and how they are erased. This is about pride, betrayal, redemption, and the price of greatness. Before Drogba, before Eto'o, before Salah, there was a boy from Chebi, Ghana, who became a king. Before the stadium lights, before the Champions League glory, there was Dome. Dome on the outside of Accra, a place few outside Ghana knew. But it was here, among red clay roads and sunburnt grass, that a legend was born. Abedi Ayew was born on November 5, 1964, in Chebi. But the story truly began in Dome, a place where football wasn't a luxury. It was survival. No TV, no boots, no trophies, but they had imagination. And they had fire. And Abedi Ayew Pele, he had something else entirely. By age 10, the whispers had already begun. That boy, he is different. At 12, he wasn't just playing with boys anymore. He was embarrassing men on the street pitches of Dome. His father, James Ayew, was a local footballer, more respected in the neighborhood than rich. But to young Abedi, his father was a king. Watching him play sparked something wild. The dream wasn't to escape poverty. The dream was to honor the game. And when Rio Tamale United came calling, he was just 14, a child, but one with vision. Beyond his years, he left his home, his family, his comfort to chase something no one from Dome had ever touched. At 16, he wasn't just on the team, he was the team. He wasn't tall, he wasn't built, but when the ball touched his foot, time seemed to bend. Left foot like silk, vision like a prophet, courage like a warrior. In a nation overflowing with raw talent, he stood alone, not because he had none, but because he felt more. Every touch with a message, every goal, a rebellion against poverty, doubt, and invincibility. And just like that, the world knocked on his door. Abedi was heading abroad, a teenager from Dome about to face his first foreign test. But greatness always comes at a price, and destiny was about to test him harder than ever before. He was 18, barely a man, but already too big for Ghana. In 1982, Abedi Ayew boarded a plane for the first time in his life, leaving behind Dome's dirt fields for the golden mirage of the Middle East, Qatar. He signed for Al Sadd Sporting Club, a rising club in a rising country. And while the climate was unfamiliar, the goal was the same: prove that an African teenager could thrive among men. He played just 8 games, but he scored 7 goals. He danced through defenders like they were shadows. The boy from Dome had arrived, but Qatar was never the destination. It was a stopover. Abedi's heartbeat for Europe. That was where the greats lived. That was where African football would be judged. FC Zurich, a top flight club, a cold city, but Abedi, he was on fire. 19 games, 9 goals, a Swiss Cup in his first season. Fans chanted his name. Scouts took notes. The dream seemed real, but dreams built on weak foundations cracked quickly. Behind the glory, something ugly was brewing. Abedi faced a silent enemy: racism, exploitation, isolation. He wasn't treated as an equal. Promises made weren't kept. Clauses were hidden. Bonuses vanished. When he spoke up, he was labeled difficult. In 1984, it all came to a head. They offered him a new deal, one that disrespected everything he had earned. He looked them in the eye and walked away. They called him arrogant, unreasonable. But Abedi wasn't chasing comfort. He was fighting for respect. With no agent, no manager, no protection, Abedi did what no one expected. He returned to Africa, not to Ghana, but to Benin, AS Dragons. 8 games, 11 goals. One confident, reminded of its king. The critics mocked the move, but he answered the only way he knew, on the pitch. No interviews, no explanation, just brilliance. Then he went back to where it all began. RTU, not because he was finished, but because he was reloading. Europe had chewed him up and spit him out. But Abedi didn't sulk. He evolved, he bled, and then he planned his return. This time, he wasn't going back to impress them, he was going back to conquer them. 1986, France, a new opportunity, a new club, a fresh start. Abedi Pele, still just in his early 20s, signed with Chamois Niortais, a club fighting in League 2, far from the glamour of Marseille or Monaco. It was a gritty team with limited expectations, but that was about to change. Abedi's arrival electrified the squad. In training, teammates were speechless. He was faster, smarter. His vision was unreal. That season, Neontes didn't just climb, they soared. Abedi scored 14 goals, assisted many more, and drove the team to promotion into Ligue 1. French football took notice. Newspapers called him Le Fantôme Noir, the Black Ghost, slipping past defenders like a shadow, creating chances from nothing. Bigger clubs circled, and finally, the giants came calling, Olympique de Marseille. Marseille signed Abedi. The price was high and expectations were higher. The locker room was stacked with superstars Jean-Pierre Papin, Didier Deschamps, Rudi Völler, and amidst them stood the Ghanaian magician. But fame breeds friction. Papin, Marseille's golden boy, reportedly clashed with Abedi. Some teammates admired him, others saw him as competition. The tension reached a boiling point and the club loaned him out to Lille. But exile only sharpened him. At Lille, Abedi played with a fury and a grace few had ever seen. 32 matches, 9 goals, several assists. He turned Lille into contenders and made Marseille regret their decision. That moment, scoring against his own club was poetic justice. Marseille scrambled to bring him back. A legal war erupted. Lille had a purchase clause. Marseille denied it. The French Football Federation intervened. Documents, courtroom sketches, dramatic narration. In the end, Marseille got their man, but at a cost. A then record 4 million francs. Abedi Pele returned, not as a backup, but as their savior. When Abedi returned to Marseille, he didn't return quietly. He returned like a storm. The boy from Dome was now a man on a mission to lead one of Europe's most ambitious clubs to glory. Marseille in the early 90s was no ordinary team. It was a monster built to dominate Europe, backed by big money, fueled by big egos, and at the heart of it all was a Ghanaian genius. Abedi didn't just play football, he painted with the ball. Grace, vision, unpredictability. He could glide past 5 defenders like they weren't even there, and still have time to smile before delivering the final pass. In 1991, Marseille reached the European Cup final, the tournament we now know as the Champions League. Their opponents, the invincibles of that era, AC Milan, Van Basten, Rijkaard, Maldini, legends. The first leg ended 1-1, and in the return leg at the Stade Velodrome, Abedi turned conductor. He controlled the tempo, broke Milan's rhythm, threaded passes only he could see. Marseille won 1-0. Milan were stunned. A power outage struck near the end of the match. Lights flickered, confusion erupted. Milan CEO Adriano Galliani pulled his team off the pitch in protest. UEFA responded by awarding Marseille a 3-0 forfeit. Milan were banned from the next season, but no matter the controversy, Abedi's fingerprints were all over the win. Back in Ligue 1, he ran the show. 3 consecutive league titles. Defenders couldn't touch him. Midfielders couldn't read him. Even his own teammates sometimes just watched. But not everyone loved the spotlight he attracted. Marseille became the first and still the only French club to win the UEFA Champions League. And the man who carved open the defense, who created a moment of magic, Abedi Ayew Pele. He was no longer just Ghana's golden boy, he was Africa's king. For the first time, a black African footballer had stood at the very top of Europe, not as a supporting act, not as a one-season wonder, but as the architect of a European crown. Abedi Pele had become the first African to ever win the UEFA Champions League. Marseille fans didn't just respect him, they worshipped him. The kid from Dome had danced his way into their hearts with feet that never seemed to touch the ground. But glory always comes at a cost. The higher you rise, the more dangerous the fall. Marseille's empire was starting to crack. Abedi's reign wasn't over, but storm clouds were gathering. Corruption, match fixing, betrayal. The same club he led to immortality was about to implode. He had conquered Europe, but peace? That was something even kings rarely find. May 26, 1993. Abedi Pele stands at the summit of football, a Champions League winner. Marseille are the kings of Europe, and Abedi is their beating heart. But barely a month later, everything begins to unravel. It wasn't just a scandal, it was a moral earthquake. Marseille, France's greatest footballing empire, was accused of corruption at the highest level. Match fixing, bribery, lies. Marseille had reportedly paid Valenciennes players not to try, to take it easy before the Champions League final. A small fix with monstrous consequences. The punishment was swift, brutal. Marseille were stripped of their Ligue 1 title, relegated to Ligue 2, banned from defending their Champions League crown. Their empire crumbled overnight, and caught in their wreckage was Abedi Pele. He was innocent, never once named in any testimony, never took a bribe, never whispered a word of deceit. But when the ship sank, so did everyone aboard. And Abedi, one of its noblest captains, were cast away with the rest. He carried that team on his shoulders. What happened wasn't his fault, but it followed him like a shadow. Marseille released players, The team scattered. The dream ended in disgrace, and Abedi left not in celebration, but in silence. The fall from grace was cruel. He had scaled the peak, but in the blink of an eye, he was back at the base of the mountain, alone. But kings do not vanish. They evolve. Abedi went to Lyon. The city welcomed him, but something was missing. The fire dimmed. The spark that once made crowds gasp now flickered beneath the surface. He played well, but never again like Marseille. Then came Torino, Italy, the land of tactics, of hard men and harder pitches. They called him the professor because he taught defenders with every flick and turn. He didn't shout, he didn't boast, he just danced. And finally, Germany, 1860 Munich, a humble side, a humble city. But Abedi brought beauty wherever he went. He played with elegance, poise, wisdom. He was never scandalous, always brilliant, but always in the shadow of a past that wasn't his fault. By 1998, the journey had come full circle. At 34, Abedi played his final professional football match. No send-off fireworks, no final headline, just a man who had given everything to the game and paid the price for things beyond his control. He had walked into Europe when no one believed in African talent. He had taken on giants and won, but he also tasted betrayal, injustice, exile. And yet, through it all, he never broke, never turned bitter. He just kept playing. Because legends don't fade, they multiply. In every young dreamer, every left-footed wonder, every boy who believes he can change the world with a ball at his feet. Before the lights of Europe blinded the world, before the medals, scandals, and glory, there was only one place that truly mattered to him: home. This was where the journey began. This was Ghana. And for Abedi Pele, Ghana was not just a nation, it was a sacred duty. In 1982, the Black Stars summoned a boy, 16, no beard, no fear, just fire. Ghana triumphed, their fourth continental crown. But for the boy from Chebi, it was just the beginning. He came back not as a prodigy, but as a champion. Through years of turbulence, change and heartbreak, one figure never faded, one man never quit. Ghana stumbled, but Abedi remained. Always, no matter the chaos, no matter the cost. He didn't just play for Ghana, he bled for it. Senegal 1992, 10 years after his debut, Abedi's moment had finally arrived. He was poetry in motion, a magician in his prime. That goal against Nigeria, it wasn't football, it was prophecy. But fate has its price. One yellow card and everything changed. Ghana went to war without their general, and when the dust settled, they fell on penalties by a single heartbeat. He wasn't on the pitch, but the silence screamed his name. He conquered Europe, he dominated Africa, but one summit remained forever out of reach. Abedi Pele never played in a World Cup, not because he failed Ghana, but because Ghana failed him. The legend's CV was flawless, except for the one line that would always remain blank. 67 caps, 33 goals, 5 AFCON appearances, countless moments of magic. But his true legacy, you won't find it in the numbers. You will find it in dreams, in justice won with pride, in sons who followed his path. Today, when his children step onto the pitch, the world sees his shadow, but Ghana sees its heartbeat. His career gave us goals, but his spirit gave us something far greater: pride, faith, identity. He wasn't just a player, he was the anthem, he was the echo, he was Ghana. As the boots came off, another role began, not as a player, but as a father and a kingmaker. Legacy isn't just what you do, it's what you leave behind and who you raise to continue the fight. This is how it ends, not with a standing ovation, not with fireworks, but with wind and silence. In 1998, at 34, Abedi Pele vanished from European football. No headlines, no interviews, just a quiet signature for a club most Ghanaians never had. Most Ghanaians had never heard of. Al Ain FC, United Arab Emirates. For some, it was the end, a legend cashing out in a retirement league. But those who said that never understood the man. At an age when most players slowed down, Abedi sped up. He scored 17 goals in just 20 games. Not in front of millions, but in front of those who believed in magic. He didn't play for applause. He played because football was the only place he felt free. He was 34. He danced like a boy. We didn't deserve him. In 1999, he returned for a final season. Just 11 matches. Just enough for one final miracle. Every game he scored, every touch had purpose, every moment whispered, this is how legends say goodbye. And when it was over, he left them with a title, his last act, a championship. And then, he was gone. No retirement ceremony, no send-off match, no jersey swap, no crowd chanting his name, no FIFA honor, No calf tribute, no Ghanaian parade. He gave everything, but he left in silence. At home, kids still screamed his name on dusty pitches, but the nation's spotlight had moved on. He wasn't on talk shows. He wasn't asked for opinions. He wasn't called legend until it was too late. He gave us everything, and we gave him silence. Heroes are supposed to be remembered, but some are only remembered when it is too late. But legends don't need applause. They pass the flame quietly. After football, Abedi built academies. He trained boys who had nothing except a dream, and among them were his sons. He never played at the World Cup, but his blood did. And every time they touched the ball, a piece of him came alive again. Does he ever wonder if it was worth it? All the goals, all the brilliance, and yet no farewell, no closure. Did I do enough? Do they remember? Will I do it again? Only he knows the answer. He didn't need a microphone. He didn't need a statue. He didn't need a farewell tour. He gave the world everything. And then, quietly, he walked away. Every legend dies twice. Once in life, and again when the world stops saying their name. But what if some legends refuse to die? What if, despite the silence, they rise again? Not in stadiums, but in sons, students, and the dreams of a continent. Some men leave shadows so big, even their children struggle to find the sun. Andre Ayew, Jordan Ayew, two sons carrying the name of a man who once carried a nation. They were never just playing football. They were battling a ghost, not to escape it, but to honor it. They don't wear the jersey to prove they are better than Abedi. They wear it because he showed them how to dream. Most stars fade into endorsements, interviews, and nostalgia. Not Abedi Pele. He didn't chase legacy. He didn't chase legacy through applause. He built it with his hands. In a country starving for structure, he planted roots. For his sons, no, for every son. Because true greatness doesn't cling to the past. It invests in the future. Today, the world loves African stars. They sell jerseys. They headline Champions League nights. They are adored. But before the cameras came the climate. Before the contracts came the cold shoulders. Before the world celebrated black excellence, Abedi Pele survived it. They stand on red carpets. He walked through fire. So, when they score, when they shine, when they are praised, they echo the name of a man the world pretends to forget. Some omissions are accidents, others are erasures. History, when told by others, often forgets black brilliance, especially when that brilliance came from Accra, especially when it didn't come with headlines, but with humility. So, they forget. The world forgets, but Ghana remembers. Legacy isn't carved in stone. It is whispered in streets, chanted in schoolyards, etched into the dreams of those too young to have seen him play. Abedi lives on in every Ghanaian coach who teaches creativity, in every kid who dribbles barefoot, believing he can go pro, in every unseen ripple he created. This isn't nostalgia, this is inheritance. Abedi Pele doesn't need global documentaries to be immortal. He already is. In Andre's leadership, in Jordan's resilience, in the role of Ghanaian crowds who still shout his name. Forget the pundits, forget the lists, forget the world that slept on him. Because real legacy isn't what the world remembers. It is what your people never forget. What made Abedi Pele so dangerous? In a world obsessed with stats, speed, and strength, how do you measure a feeling? You can count goals, you can list trophies, but you can't measure magic. You can only feel it. Watch closely, because when Abedi touched the ball, time didn't just slow down. It obeyed him. He wasn't trying to impress you. He was escaping something. Poverty, expectation, invisibility. Every feint, every drag down was survival. Football wasn't a game to him. It was a weapon. And Abedi was lethal. Some players see space. Abedi saw the future. He didn't pass where you were. He passed where your dreams were heading. He passed into destiny. How do you stop someone who creates options that didn't exist a second ago? He didn't need an armband. He owned the pitch with presence. While others chased the game, Abedi wrote it like a composer, building tension before dropping the beat. In today's game, flair is a brand. For Abedi, it was a shield. The stepovers, escape routes, the tricks, messages. I can dance in danger. I am not afraid of the system. I am not here to fit in. He wasn't just playing for himself. He was playing for us. For every African kid told they weren't good enough. But behind the elegance was rage. Behind the smile was fire. He was a target. on and off the pitch. But he didn't complain. He fought. And when he couldn't beat you with the ball, he would beat you with will. They call today's players technical, intelligent, fluid, but everything they celebrate now, Abedi did it before it was cool, before it was safe, before it was profitable. Today's stars, they echo his rhythm, but they don't carry his scars. What made Abedi Pele dangerous wasn't just what he did with the ball, it was what he represented. He proved that African talent wasn't raw, it was refined. We didn't chase shadows, we became the light. To the world, he was a magician. To us, he was proof. They will talk about stats, they will argue over goals, but some names don't live in debate, they live in feelings. Abedi Ayew Pele, not just a player, the storm before the silence. Abedi Pele's story is more than football. It's a warning, a lesson about how the world forgets its pioneers. How those who change everything are often the ones left out of the headlines. He was the first African to conquer Europe's biggest stage. The sorcerer who danced past giants. The heartbeat of Ghana. He didn't wait for permission. He kicked the door open so others could walk through. And yet, his name whispers where it should roar. How many more Abedi Peles will fade quietly? How many stories will disappear because no one bothered to remember? If he inspired you, if you learned something new, if you felt anything at all, don't let this story die here. Speak his name, post his clips, tell someone who has never heard of him before. Because legends only live on if we choose to carry them. Abedi Ayew Pele, the genius they forgot. The legend we will not. The king who never needed a crown to be immortal.